Because what I'm intending to do is what I think you'd expect me to do. And that is give you my initial response to the questions. Because the answers cannot be full. That would insult the questions. But secondly, the research you do, if your question is a serious question, you will do more work on it than simply listening to me. And that's the value of it, that you learn to get answers from different sources as to your questions. So the answers will be relatively brief, which does not mean that's all I have to say on the topic. It simply means I want to try and get through as many as I can. Is that all right? Okay, number one. How do you prove the existence of God to people that say it's all about human judgment? Well, the first problem is the word prove. In mathematics, in my own field, you have proof of a kind that you get in no other discipline, natural science or ordinary life, where proof is a process of assuming a set of axioms, using an agreed system of logic to come to a definitive solution. You don't get that in any other field. You come down to the informal use of the word proof, which is give evidence for, establish beyond reasonable doubt. Now, of course, in ordinary life, you have to do that. I trust my life to the aircraft that will carry me from Sydney to London. I can't prove in any absolute sense it's going to get me there, but I have to commit my life to it. I've been married to the same wife for 46 years. I can't prove to you mathematically that she loves me, but I stake my life on it. So you get the idea, don't you? Very well. Secondly, to people who say it's all about human judgment, of course it's all about human judgment. We have to decide. That's why you're at university, to learn to educate your powers of critical thought and judgment. It's not a negative thing that it's all about human judgment. But perhaps the question implies that because it's about human judgment, it's arbitrary. That's not true either. As you know, you will be going into work as qualified engineers and you'll be able to calculate the stability of a house or a bridge and so on. It depends on your judgment, but your judgment's not arbitrary because behind it there's been a great deal of intellectual training. So it seems to me that question is based on false assumptions. One of the things that's really important in a free society is that we are free to make up our own minds. I wouldn't insult you by suggesting I can make up your mind for you. I can give you evidence and you can quiz other people. You've got a week of all kinds of interesting lectures where you can find out about things. And in order to make a rational judgment and a firm judgment, you need to have information, and that is what the Christian Union is supplying. Now, a completely mindless, unguided process implies severe improbability for it to be true. However, as we observe the universe, you come to terms with the fact that there are billions of planets that have been around for billions of years. When we weigh up the odds of these planets over time, doesn't this completely mindless, unguided process seem all the more likely? Well, this is written by a man of 17. It's lovely that we've got young people in as young as that in the university here. Well, it depends what you mean. No atheist that I know of accepts the view that life is simply a random accident. None. Richard Dawkins will be very careful to tell you that he believes non-random processes are involved in natural selection and so on, but he makes the mistake, at least he used to, not so much now, of thinking that natural selection was involved in the creation of life, which of course it wasn't. You can't have natural selection until life is growing. The improbability calculations are the things that lead many people, including the famous Australian physicist Paul Davies, to say, look, it's not a matter of adding a few noughts onto the billions of years, because we now recognize the problem to be one of information. And it's the old monkeys typing Shakespeare thing. The idea that you can get information by extending by a few quadrillion years is just nonsense. So long as it's a finite time backwards, you just don't get it. So I don't think there's any real difficulty there, not from the atheist side either. The universe looks huge and it looks very ancient, and yes, billions and billions of planets, but if you ask Paul Davies again, are we alone in this universe? He'll say we're alone. He doesn't like to think that way, but his scientific mind tells us we're that way. Next question. If science and God coexist, how does evolution and the Big Bang Theory coexist with God? Well, I think the question remains, can you be a believer in God and believe in the Big Bang Theory? Of course. The Big Bang Theory, Big Bang is a label and a mystery. It's simply saying there was a beginning. That's what the Bible has said for millennia. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And I sometimes point out, politely of course, to my physics friends, that for centuries, Aristotle dominated European science. And so everybody believed that the universe was eternal backwards in time. And I remember in the 1960s when the first evidence came in for what we call the Standard Model, the hot Big Bang. You probably don't know it was fiercely resisted by the leading scientists in the United Kingdom. Do you know why? Well, let me quote to you the editor of Nature. He said, we can't go down this road of a Big Bang, of a beginning, because it will give far too much leverage to people who believe the Bible. And I've made the point, very pointedly, to some of the world's leading physicists. If you had taken the worldview of the Bible more seriously earlier, you might have been looking for evidence of a beginning to space-time before you did. Some people say you can't base any predictions on the Bible. Of course you can. You can predict, A, that science can be done, and you can predict that you will find evidence from the beginning. So, Big Bang is no embarrassment to a Christian. I think some Christians get a bit worried, Big Bang. As I say, Fred Hoyle, who was my examiner at Cambridge, he labeled it the Big Bang because he didn't believe in it. It was his joke, you're a Big Bang. He believed in a steady-state universe. The wonderful thing about it now is the extremely close convergence between what the Bible says, in the beginning God created, and what cosmology and physics say there was a beginning to space-time. And that includes, by the way, in case you want to raise the question of the multiverse, that includes believers in the multiverse. But I'll not go into the details of that now since nobody asked it. How does evolution coexist with God? Well, it clearly coexists with belief in God because there are many Christians that accept various levels of the theory of evolution. I'm a mathematician, so I tend to be more skeptic than most. I'm not skeptical of what Darwin observed brilliantly, the variations and Galapagos finches and all that kind of thing. But that goes no way to establishing that natural selection and mutation, which of course Darwin knew nothing about, can create innovative information. Now that's a very highly interesting topic, and I've written a book about it, so I'm going to say no more about it here. Has Science Buried God? The title here is the subtitle of my book, God's Undertaker. The only thing I would say about it is this. Deducing atheism from biology is a risky business. Because first of all, they don't exist in the same category. Biology is a science, atheism is a world view. Secondly, if you're going to deduce atheism from biology, it must be A, logically possible, and secondly, your theory of evolution, whatever it is, must bear the weight you put on it. Now, can you logically deduce atheism from biology? No. For the same reason as I explained, and nobody batted an eyelid when I mentioned Isaac Newton. The existence of a mechanism or a law that does something is not an argument against the existence of an agent who designed that law or mechanism. And that includes natural selection. Goodness me, that natural selection does something is utterly obvious as I look around this room. Why are we all different? Why don't we all look the same? Well, there's been selecting going on. Do you know, even in a lecture like this, sometimes selecting is going on. Yeah. Of course, you wouldn't understand that, would you? No. And most of us, a third of us, will have mutations that will eventually kill us. Natural selection mutations clearly do something. But do they do everything? That's the thing. That's where I'm skeptical. But my belief in God doesn't depend on it. But that's another long story. If you want to read what I think about it, there are two books, God's Undertaker, Science Buried God, and 7 Days That Divided the World. How do you explain to children how you believe in God when you can't even see Him? How do you explain gravity to children when you can't see it? Similar problem, isn't it? Just as difficult. Explaining things to children is very difficult. as you will discover. You may have already discovered it. But the questions children ask, you know, are fantastically interesting. Well, I do it by simple analogies. They can't see the wind. The wind is there. They can feel the wind. They can't see it. Seeing is only one bit of evidence. One of the ironies of contemporary philosophy, of course, is this. I can't help telling you this because it's so incredible. One of our leading philosophers is A.C. Gray. You've probably heard of him down here in Australia. And he said, of course, you Christians, you believe in blind faith because Jesus expects blind faith. And I thought, this is going to be fascinating. What's he going to quote? And to my utter amazement, he quotes Doubting Thomas. Have you heard of Doubting Thomas? He was the man that when Jesus appeared, risen from the dead, he wouldn't believe the other disciples. And he said, unless I see, unless I touch, I'm not going to believe. So a few days later, Jesus appears. Thomas believes, and then Jesus says this, because you've seen me, you've believed. Happy are those who have not seen and yet believe. And Reagan says, there you are. Jesus expects you to believe without evidence. Can a man not read? Because you have seen, you have believed. Not because you have no evidence. Blessed are they that have no evidence. Seeing is only one part of evidence. Did any of you see Nero? Have you seen Queen Victoria? Do you believe they existed? Of course you do. Because seeing is only one limited part of our armory of evidence, you see. Alright? So, explaining things to children is difficult. You have to learn to do it and it'll take you a lifetime. And then they'll be explaining things to you. Especially how computers work. What evidence is there for a God, e.g. to convince an agnostic of Christianity? Well, it depends. These questions are so general they're unanswerable. What do you mean by an agnostic, first of all? There are two kinds of agnostics. I'm an agnostic about most things. I just don't know about them. So I'm looking for information. And my agnosticism increases every day because there are more and more things I don't know. There are more research papers published in my field than I could ever read. So I'm a massive agnostic, agnosko, I do not know. That's a perfectly healthy thing to be. But then some agnostics do a wonderful intellectual twist and they say you cannot know. Well, if they don't know, how can they know that you cannot know? And people who take that view, of course, are not agnostics at all. They are fixed in their idea that you cannot know, and how they know you cannot know, I just don't know. So it depends on the approach and the kind of evidence I would give today. We're talking about science, and the kind of arguments I would use here. But my evidence for God, and that comes out a bit later, isn't restricted to science, of course. Next question. If a deity is necessary to explain creation, where did this deity originate? Well, let's have the 4-year-old version. Today, my 4-year-old son asked, who created God? There you are. Pretty good for 4. I hope he's not still asking it when he's 44. Now, Richard Dawkins puts this at the heart of the God delusion. If you believe in God as a creator, you have to ask who created the creator. Do you? Well, let's think about the question. Who or what created X? What does that assume? It assumes X was created, of course. But if God wasn't created, who created the creator doesn't apply to him. Full stop. It's a clever question, and yet it isn't. It's a silly question. If Richard Dawkins had written a book called The Created God's Delusion, I don't think anybody would have read it. I don't need him, and you don't need him to tell you created gods are a delusion. We usually call them idols. So the first point is the question is what many philosophers call a complex question. It hides an assumption that directs your attention away from the fundamental issue. Who created the creator is assuming the creator was created. But the basic claim of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam is that God was not created, so the question simply doesn't apply. Point number 2, it does apply to created creators. So I put it to Richard Dawkins when he came up in our discussion. I said to him, you believe the universe created you, so let me ask you your question, which you think is valid. Who created your creator? I've waited 8 years for an answer to that, I haven't got it yet. The third point to be made about it is, philosophically, it's really asking the question, what is the nature of ultimate reality? Do the questions go back forever? They usually don't on either side of this debate. For an atheist, many of my atheist friends, the ultimate reality is mass energy, the multiverse, strings or something like that. For me as a Christian, the ultimate reality is God. So the real question that lies behind this is, which reality is ultimate? You see? So that's that question. Now, let's see. There are, this is interesting, 1, 2, 3, 4 questions that are about the same thing, which is unusual. So let's have a look. Right, okay, let's have a look at them. 4 questions on the same thing. Agreed, the order of the universe is striking and something to seek an explanation for, but why for you does a Christian God provide that explanation? Is another concept of God, or simply agnostic uncertainty, confusion? I'm not sure what that means, that's on the other version. How did science lead you to a Christian God, not to a Hindu or Greek or Islamic God? Thanks for coming to Perth. Well, thank you. If we granted everything you've said today, would it still not be part of the Christian case? Could a Muslim not argue the same? And conclude elsewhere entirely. Thank you. That's very polite. Do you think you'd be a Muslim if you grew up in a Muslim family? Has science buried the gods of other religions? So you see what that's all about. And it's obviously the most important question in the room. It is an extremely important question. What about other religions? If I'd grown up in a Muslim family, I would probably be Muslim. Of course, that's true. But the question underlying it is, could I ever change, and would it ever be right to change? If I grew up in a Hindu family, I might have been a Hindu. If I grew up in a Marxist family, I might have been a Marxist. This was one of the most important questions I faced in my first week of college. Here I am, Irish, believing in God. My parents did, my grandparents did, and their parents did. And obviously it's Irish genetics. So I deliberately befriended somebody that had never been to church, who didn't believe in God, and discussed these things for 2 years. And that person became a Christian. That was a very important day for me, because I saw that people could change their worldview on the basis of evidence. Now, how do I approach this question of other religions? Firstly, by saying something enormously important. When you deal with this question, it can produce a great deal of heat, and it can produce a great deal of unpleasant conflict. And there's no need for that, and I'll tell you why. You see, the differences in religions and philosophies do not usually lie at the moral level. What do I mean by that? Well, from my perspective as a Christian, and I believe my Jewish friends and Muslim friends would believe this too, because they accept Genesis. Every man and woman, whether they believe in God or not, is of infinite value because they're made in the image of God. That is immensely important to me. When I look at you, that you carry the image of God. You are utterly special. And very often when questions about other religions are raised, people think that if you criticize in any way, you are looking down on them morally. Well, let me tell you, my Muslim, Jewish, Hindu, atheist friends could put me to shame. As a Christian, I'm not claiming to be perfect. I mess up as much as anybody else. And I've learned a great deal from my non-Christian friends. I respect them for their moral standards. And you will meet people of other faiths who think the way we behave largely in the West is utterly scandalous. They're not wrong in all that they say, are they? So that's the first thing to get out of the way. What I now am going to say is no critique of their moral standards or their capacity to behave morally. Now, if you leave Christianity out of it for a minute, religions will not agree with each other. Hindus will never agree with Muslims about the number of gods there are. That's simply a fact. Everybody admits it. And when it comes to the three great monotheistic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, well, let's test the thing. My Jewish friends, of whom I have many, believe that Jesus died and did not rise. My Muslim friends, of whom I have many, believe that Jesus did not die. I believe he both died and rose. Now, in audiences consisting of people from these faiths, we all agree on that this is the fact, that's what we believe. But you will say all three of those things cannot be simultaneously true, because they are all statements about history. So how can you answer it? Well, the only way I know of is evidential. That is, we consider the evidence. And the reason I'm a Christian is, at the first level, because I believe the evidence surrounding the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ is convincing. And I have to make up my own mind on the basis of the evidence, and so do you. Now, there's a little underneath thing here that's very important, which says, agreed the order of the universe is striking, but why does a Christian God provide that explanation? And what the questioner is referring to is a perfectly legitimate point. That you could listen to my argument that I made 99.5% of it. And I get many letters from Jews and Muslims thanking me for defending the existence of God in the public space. I'm very grateful for that. I'm very happy to do that and to be encouraged by them. But how do I make the step, and it's a real step recognized by this question, to the God of Christianity? I don't make it on the basis of science, you know. That's the answer to that. Because you see, Christianity is not a philosophy, merely. It is geared into history, makes basic Christian claims. It is about someone in history, a specific figure, Jesus Christ, who came and lived and died, and I believe rose again, and has left his fingerprints on history. So we have to approach it. That's why history, as I mentioned earlier, is such an important intellectual discipline. Because we can't repeat history in the laboratory to see what happened. That's why you like Inspector Morse, of course, don't you? You can't repeat Morse and say, let's rerun the murder to see what happened. You just can't do that. You have to make an inference to the best explanation. So my reasons for believing in the Christian God are, firstly, I believe that the evidence of history is enough to establish the truth of Jesus' claim. But secondly, is the evidence of my own experience. Now, there is a sense in which this is a personal question, and I'll have to give you a personal answer to it. If you don't mind, if you don't like personal answers, just go to sleep for a couple of minutes, and I'll wake you up in a minute or two. But you see, it can be tested. And the interesting thing is, if you look at religions, now this may appeal to you to be a bit crude, but we haven't a lot of time. Most people's concept of religion, including Christianity, is the University of Western Australia. That is, you have an entrance exam or some sort of thing that gets you in. Is that right? And then you're on the way. And here you are all sitting and you're on the way, aren't you? But you know as well as I do that the professors, however nice they are, and I'm sure they're wonderful, can't guarantee you getting a degree, can they? Why not? Well, because there's a thing called finals. And finals is judgment day, isn't it? And judgment day depends on your merit, doesn't it? You will get through at the end, and it depends entirely on your merit, which is why the professors cannot guarantee you're going to get through. Isn't that right? That's what a university is like. That's what many people think religion's like. You go through some sort of initiation, ceremony, you're on the way, and then there are all these gurus, imams, priests, to help you, guide you, look after you spiritually. But they can't guarantee you're going to be accepted by God in the judgment, because it depends on your merit. That's the way it is, yes? But that isn't Christianity, yes? The devastatingly surprising thing about Christianity is it is not a system of merit like that. Now let's try and get this clear, because this is a really big issue. And millions of people have been put off religion in general and Christianity in particular because they think that it's an oppressive, systematized, burden placed on you where you desperately have to try in the hope that you'll get accepted by God in the end. And very often, if they're sensitive, they give up the attempt and say, it's hopeless, I can't keep this. That's not what Christ offered. He came to this earth and he said, I am the door. What did he mean by that? He didn't mean he was a literal door, of course. He meant he was a doorway into a genuine experience with God. And he said, if anybody hears my voice and believes on him that sent me, he already has eternal life. And listen to this. And shall not come into judgment. That's incredible. And you'll see immediately that Jesus competes with no other religion, because nobody else offers this. So it's no insult to any other religion to accept from Christ what they don't offer. And what he offers is a known forgiveness on this earth, because his acceptance doesn't depend on our merit. It depends on something that Christ did on the cross, his death and resurrection. Now, it's a good thing to hear what Christianity says. You might find this a bit of gobbledygook, but just listen. The idea is, the deep idea, and remember, we don't know what gravity is, so don't be surprised that these concepts are difficult. The idea is we've messed up and we've created a great barrier between God and ourselves. And we can't overcome it because of our own basic flaws and imperfections. So God has stepped in and says, I'm going to do something. And Christ died for my sin. Let's put it in biblical language. And he rose again, so that if I trust him, what happened to him is counted as happening to me. And therefore I'm sitting here knowing that I am being accepted. Now let me try and explain to you this in a very easy way. I've been married, as I said, 46 years. I met my wife on my first day at university. She was the most beautiful sight I've ever seen. She was 16, but that's another story. So, can you imagine me coming to her and saying, Sally, I'd like you to be my wife. Now, here's a cookbook. It's full of laws. If you want to make apple cake, thou shalt take 1 kilo of flour, thou shalt take 2 kilos of sugar, thou shalt mix it with a bowl, thou shalt heat it to 500 degrees, thou shalt do this and thou shalt do that. Now, if you keep these laws, let's say for 30 to 40 years, then I think about accepting you. So will you be my wife? Well, I think I get the cookbook in my face. Now you're laughing. That's how millions of people think of God. That's exactly what they do. They're trying to keep the rules in the cookbook to gain acceptance. Let me put this very strongly. You would not insult a fellow human being by suggesting your acceptance of them depends on their merit or performance. And you would feel insulted if that happened to you. You see, that explains the whole thing to me. God doesn't insult us. He offers us forgiveness here and now if we trust him. You see, what sets my wife free to cook is that my acceptance of her doesn't depend on her cooking. You imagine what would happen if it did. She goes into the kitchen and she gets all the ingredients micrometrically correct. And then she starts to think, if I don't get this 100% right, I'll have to go back to my mother. So she turns the thing, she gets so blinded or panicked, she turns the thing up to 1,000 degrees centigrade. Now comes a burnt offering.
Burnt offering, just like
that is slavery, ladies and gentlemen. And I bet there are many people in this room regard religion as a slavery. And they've come across versions of Christianity that they found oppressive and crushing because they never discovered this essential ingredient, which is why I'm a Christian, which is what I'm asked here, which is that God will accept me independently of my merit because he's got a big enough forgiveness to deal with my sin. And now I am free to live for him, not to gain acceptance, but because I've got it. And the happiest marriages you will find in life are those where the mutual acceptance is that. It's at the beginning of the relationship. not a hero. So that's my main reason. And I repeat, Jesus competes with nobody on this, because nobody else offers us this kind of forgiveness. Now, a couple more questions. Have we a couple more minutes, sir? One more minute. How do you reconcile natural evil with creation? Google my name in New Zealand. I arrived in Christchurch 4 days after the earthquake. And I have loads of talks on the internet on that question of natural evil and God. What do you think of the ultimate ethical effects of atheism? Disastrous. But let the atheists tell you that. Nietzsche, one of the most brilliant of them, said, you know, you're killing yourselves. You think, and Dawkins and Hitchens and all think, that you can retain the values of a Western liberal democracy and be atheist. Nietzsche would laugh at you and say it's impossible. Many of my Russian friends who are atheists said, we thought we could get rid of God and retain a value for human beings. 100 million deaths later, we discovered we were wrong. Listen to Richard Dawkins describe the effects of his own atheism. The universe is just like you'd expect it to be if at bottom there is no good, no evil, no justice. DNA just as we dance to its music. That is the abolition of morality. Now he tries to withdraw from that. That's another story. But that is the bleakness of atheism. And that's a different topic. I was arguing here that the atheistic view does not allow us even to believe in our own rationality. I would also want to argue it doesn't give us a base for morality. Atheists, of course, can behave, as I said before, exemplary. But the reason for that is they're made in the image of God, whether they believe it or not. But atheism gives no rational justification for that. There are some more questions. I'm sorry I can't answer them. But lovely to be with you. Thank you very much indeed.